In the Caribbean, many efforts have been made to unite the Caribbean, to make us one unit. Since the failed federation in the early 60s, many attempts have been made. But one group of countries in the Eastern Caribbean has come closest to functioning as a unit. We are the OECS. But close? How close? Is it close enough? I'm Jerry George. This is Time to Face the Facts. Thank you for joining us. We'll be right back in just a moment.
If you are serious about business, then log on and participate in Business Advantage. Every Monday, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., log on to www.niceradio.info. Business Advantage inspires you to believe that the man who wins is the one who thinks he can. Business Advantage with host Jerry George, mentoring the next generation of Caribbean entrepreneurs. 8 to 10 p.m. Mondays on www.niceradio.info. For further information, email caribbeaninformationhub@gmail.com. Like the Business Advantage Facebook page or call 1-784-456-5967 to participate.
To thrive in today's dynamic business environment, you need the right partner. Digicel Business is that partner, offering you the flexibility you need to flourish. Our scalable solutions will increase your effectiveness and efficiency while enabling workforce mobility. Large or small, you can't hide from potential threats to your business. With a partner protecting your interests, you can focus on productivity. It's amazing where the right partnership can develop and how far it can take you. Contact us today. Digicel Business, complete solutions for your needs.
Welcome back to this edition of Time to Face the Facts. We're going to be looking at OECS integration. And joining us this evening, members of the Regional Integration Diaspora Unit from St. Lucia. Let me start with my extreme right and ask you to introduce yourself and what you do there.
Okay, my name is Safia Hornbeek. I am Program Officer within the Regional Integration Unit of the OECS Commission, and primarily the focal point for movement of persons under the new regime, the new Treaty of Bastille.
Thank you, Safia.
I'm Elma Jean Isaac. I'm the coordinator of the Regional Integration Unit at the Commission. And that is the unit that essentially supports member states in their efforts at implementing their obligations under the revised Treaty of Bastille.
Thank you.
And I am Paula Cauldron, Managing Director of Caribbean Awning Production Company in St. Lucia.
Okay, so we have a business person on set with us this evening. Let's go back a little bit as we seek to come forward. OECS Union, it grew out of, first of all, a group of non-independent states at the time, trying to find a path for themselves. Could you paint the picture as to where we came from?
Yes, we came from a very far way back, Jerry. And you're right, we have to go back to come forward.
Yeah.
The OECS, in fact, was established in 1981 by the Treaty of Bastille. And since then, we've moved forward with significant work done on integration under that treaty, but it was a modest treaty compared to what is happening now. We had in 2011 the ratification, that is the entry into force of the revised Treaty of Bastille, which established the OECS and the OECS Economic Union, which I know we're going to talk a lot about tonight, the OECS Economic Union. Now, in between that time, and even before 1981, we had the court established, the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, so that dates back to 1967. In 1983, we had the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, so again, OECS countries coming together. And in between 1983 and even now, we have certain strides made by the OECS as a group, the establishment of their pharmaceutical procurement services, joint representation in various countries overseas. We have ECTEL, which while it does not include all of the OECS countries, because Antigua is not part of ECTEL, was a significant milestone in terms of what countries could achieve when they come together. and make a determination that they want to reach a particular point. So I think these are some of the critical areas that we can point to for integration. We also have the regional security system, which is OECS plus Barbados, critical for integration, critical for security of the waters surrounding our countries. So those are some that I would want to point to.
Agreed, and looking on the surface, it's definitely a commendable effort so far. But as I said in my opening statement, we've come close. Are we close enough is what we're going to be discussing, and what can we do to really take this forward. As we look at what happened, you're right, there was the currency union, the central bank, the question of tertiary education and all these things started out. But we revised the treaty. Yes. And I'm wondering sometimes if we shouldn't have gone for a completely new treaty.
Actually, the revision of the treaty was designed so that you could keep what and consolidate what was achieved already, but move forward building on the old treaty. And I'll tell you some of the critical things that happened in the revised treaty that are very fundamental, and in some cases even pushing the envelope. The revised treaty is the basis for the establishment of this economic union as a single financial and economic space. So picture you're from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Picture all of the OECS countries operating as though you were operating between St. Vincent and Union Island. Okay? So you want to close the space. You want to remove the impression and the impact of water, the water that is surrounding us. You want to ensure that all of your systems that are in place are identical as far as possible, that if Safia wants to do business, she's Vincentian, wanting to do business in St. Lucia, that she can do that and face no barriers, no requirements that are different from a St. Lucian. So that is what you want to get to when you talk of that single space. Goods, people, capital, services must be able to move freely, and you have a right to establish in that space. So the economic union is one. There is also the change in the architecture, because if you want to achieve that economic union, there are certain things that must happen. So we established under that treaty the Economic Affairs Council, which has to take responsibility for the economic union, for implementation. We established the OECS Assembly of Parliamentarians.
Now talk a little bit more about that too.
Yes, sure. I know we have to talk about
how that has really helped,
because it's very important. Opposition and government members from the elected members of all of the member states coming together and sitting in the same forum and discussing matters that are of relevance to their countries. So you come as a delegation from your country. Now, I don't know that there's anywhere else that happens in the Caribbean, certainly. And there is a requirement in the treaty that the opposition always be represented. So even where you don't have a parliamentary representative, or you don't have a parliamentary opposition, the head of state, so whether it is your governor general or your president, must appoint someone to represent the opposition. So discussion on policies relating to integration, on legislation that is proposed for integration, being done at that level, with both sides of the House represented.
No, I hear that, and why I said maybe we probably should have chosen, and this is just me, right, to go for a completely new and start over the page, because in a sense, I feel that we have brought forward some of the inertia in the new treaty. This is my feeling.
Okay.
All right, and
okay.
that's what I'm challenging
we'll hear you out.
on that tonight. Because if you look at what the Europeans did, they basically went for a new treaty when they formed the Union.
Actually, they consolidated several treaties.
They consolidated.
In coming at the new treaty.
I agree, but under the rubrics of basically a new treaty.
Yeah.
But how have we worked? You know, you use St. Vincent and the Grenadines as a beautiful example that a person in Kingston shouldn't feel any different in operation to a person in Union Island.
Yes.
The furthest island away. Probably not quite, but let's use that one. So why are we still feeling our way with this after all of these years?
It's inevitable. I often put it this way, and I say to people, integration is not an event. It's a progression of events. So that you celebrate each milestone, but perhaps very rarely in our lifetime, I don't know that we will say, the integration has happened, because integration will continue, and we will find other areas in which we want to move along the continuum of integration. We're not going to the political integration discussion tonight, I hope. But you achieve little things, little steps as you go along. And there's no occasion on which it is possible, because you're dealing with several countries. There's no occasion on which it is possible to have everyone do everything at the same time. You have to bear that in mind when you're creating your timeline. You work towards that. But not everything in the treaty is going to be achieved in one step, in 2 steps. You have to determine what realistically is the way in which you're going to achieve the obligations in the treaty.
Let me move to Safia in this regard, because you're the person responsible for movement, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I've always said, if the OECS gets the movement issue right, trust me, the rest will be easy. But we still see countries, although having agreed to harmonization, to cooperation, etc., slowly putting in place, I think most have now, the question of movement. Why is that so? Why, if we have sat together and agreed together, this is what we need to do, don't we go back to parliaments and do it?
Yes, and no, in 2 senses. Most member states are not at the same place. They're not at the same, while we in the OECS are closer to our economic situation, our social structures and so forth, we are not exactly at the same place in every member state. So what you found is when member states agree to move ahead with the process, there are some internal issues that needed to be addressed in order to accommodate the commitment they made in terms of free movement. So it was not as simple as going back to your member state and,
okay,
and
let's start
passing
somewhere.
images.
When did the agreement to do this, when was the agreement taken?
Well, the treaty entered into force in 2011 with 4 member states depositing their instrument of ratification. So that gave the basis for implementation of the provisions. Then after that, the heads sat and met and gave an indicative date of August 1st, 2011 for the implementation of the free movement of persons regime. And member states were to work towards that deadline. Of course, as I said, we had to do that analysis process and see where member states were in terms of what restrictions need to be removed. Some had more than some, so it took a little longer for some member states to start and implement. But immediately, we started with St. Vincent, made the deadline for August 1st, 2011, and thereafter Dominica, St. Kitts, and Nevis, Montserrat immediately came on board by the following year. The process has been a little, should I say, tighter or slower in St. Lucia, who has recently come on board, and Antigua is putting the final processes together for the implementation.
What could have been, listen, if they had set a date for general elections, it would have happened. So what could have been the impediment that, maybe I see you looking at your boss, you want to
that's okay, that's okay, we can have that conversation.
Have been such an impediment that could not be taken to Parliament and fixed?
It's a combination of things. As Safia said, not all of the member states have the same capacity internally. Sometimes it is that you have a swathe of legislation that you need to be addressed, but you don't have the capacity in your Attorney General's chambers. Those are realities that the countries face.
Stop. The 2 countries you called, St. Lucia and Antigua, together represent the largest of the GDP of the entire OECS. I don't take that excuse.
That's not an excuse, that's a fact.
That they don't have the capacity?
That not all member states have the same capacity.
The 2 regional states with the biggest GDP?
But those are also the 2 member states that probably have the biggest weight, the biggest workload in their AG's chambers. So they have to balance all of that. That's the reality. The biggest workload. I'm telling you that the Attorney General's chambers is one of the places where the member states are challenged, because it's review of legislation that has to be put on the books. You say go to Parliament. But in some cases, you have several pieces of legislation that need to be addressed. So it's not always easy and straightforward for them.
So you mean those other countries had much more convoluted legislation than all the others in the OECS?
No, not convoluted.
Well, I don't get it because you see, I don't get it, I'm sorry.
No, well, we're just telling you from our perspective, one of the bases on which there can be delays in member states.
I understand you.
But in the case of Antigua, for example, bear in mind they also had a general election come in the mix. And sometimes that slows things down as well. So what we do from our end, though, is to support them as much as we can. We started doing the revision, the research on what legislation may need to be revised and supporting them in any way possible. But internally, I would say perhaps we don't always get the entire picture from outside. But that is one of the realities of integration, that it does not always move as quickly as you may want it to, and you factor that in. Whether you like it or not, you factor it into the work to be done. Now, I'll say this. We were talking about legislative work to be done. Countries also agreed to facilitate administratively so that even where they could not necessarily get all the legislation on the books, they were in fact taking action, again incrementally, because some would have removed some pieces. For example, the work relating to traveling on your ID card. That was done very early by most of the countries. The finishing pieces relating to the removal of the requirement for the work permit, for example, the ability to drive using your driver's license from your home country. So those other pieces needed to be addressed.
So those have not been addressed?
Those have now been addressed. Yes. Antigua is the last to complete.
Antigua is the last to complete. But as Elmegine pointed out, they've been doing it in steps. And Antigua, I can tell you, they're facilitating in relation to persons not requiring a work permit. I think maybe in another 2 weeks or so, we should see full implementation in Antigua, because we are continuing to work with them. And we understand that the change of government in Antigua would have affected their implementation, because they started the legislative process prior to this government coming into office. So we're anticipating them being fully on board in another 2 or so weeks in terms of all the provisions for the movement of persons.
One of the things that this program will aim to do is to put on basis that, listen, if we're going out to make agreements, in that regard, we need to, because we saw what happened with the Barbados Shanique Myrick situation.
Yeah.
Do we leave it open for, once again, something like the CCJ to have to come and rule on something that is in treaty, that we've agreed on, we've signed to? So we need some dispatch, because this is business. We need dispatch in doing it, and one of the things I'd like to see is a bit more of that dispatch taking place in terms of when we make agreements. But let's go to some of the institutions that we have set up, okay? And you mentioned, for example, the courts, the civil aviation, the ECCB, help me.
I mentioned ECTEL, although not everybody is in there.
In fact, let me jump off from ECTEL. Now, the treaty tells me, right, that it's formed so that there's cooperation, there is harmonization, and there's some other word you use.
Collaboration.
Collaboration, that's the other word I was thinking of. And I've always asked myself this question: are we serious if we're going to simply sit by and look at a country just opt out? You are absolutely correct when it comes to the questions of telecommunications. We have seen how it has worked, yet Antigua has not joined. So what is the point?
You know, the thing about integration is this: you're dealing with sovereign countries, and that you always have to start from that basis. They are sovereign countries. They can opt in and opt out, and they make their determinations on the basis of what is expedient for them nationally, what systems they may have in place, and so on. Now, having said that, I am not saying that Antigua will never participate in ECTEL, but at the time that ECTEL was being established, that was their position, that they did not want to be a part of it.
How long ago was that?
ECTEL was established in 2000.
In 2000?
Yeah.
This is 2014.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. As a sovereign country, they can decide that they still do not want to be part of ECTEL. That is their sovereign right. And meanwhile, the others move along. So you would notice, however, that within the treaty, that is not an institution that you would see reflected as an institution of the OECS, because to be named an institution of the OECS, you have to be representative of at least the full members of the OECS. So that with Antigua out, it means that ECTEL is not named as an institution, but we continue to work closely with all of the member states that participate in it.
Paula, you're a businesswoman, and you're here in that capacity this evening. And I don't know how you feel about that situation, because to me the ECTEL situation is a business situation. Are you facing any other similar kinds of impediments as a business person working in the OECS?
Well, to begin with, I think I support integration. I think we as a people need to work together, and we need to come together and understand that we have to try and maintain some form of identity, otherwise we can lose our identity very quickly. Whether it's through various types of investors coming in, flooding into this part of the region or other. I think what has not happened is the education of what the integration is throughout the OECS, for the layperson to understand what it means to them. The only thing right now that they understand, since St. Lucia has joined free movement, and I think the reason why they took so long had to do with economic citizenship. Is the
economic
fact,
citizenship in
yes.
terms of?
Well, Dominica has economic citizenship. They can come to the OECS. We are one now. So you can just come to St. Lucia, you can go to St. Vincent, you can go to Grenada and set up. It's easy. And it's easier for them because they have more facilities than the local people within the OECS.
Who does?
Whether it's the Chinese or the Russians or the
I
Americans
see. Okay.
or the Indians, you know, whoever it is that's coming in to invest and move around. I think the lack of education and understanding, and primarily with customs and immigration, because of the experiences that we have had, they must understand that this is like the United States. Our border is a water, but we are one, and that we should be able to step from one island to the next and have no problems. Just think of how the United States works, and just think this is what we are about, and this is what we want to achieve. One good thing with the OECS is that we have one currency. As far as trade is concerned, when the CSME was implemented, which is similar, because you have the same opportunities, you couldn't go into some of the OECS islands and do work. And I had a very bad experience with my staff when our products were first introduced into the Caribbean.
What those products might be?
Awnings, blinds, shades, shutters. People didn't know much about it.
Let's put the shutters on this portion of the program, and we'll take a break and come right back. This is Time to Face the Facts, and we're looking at OECS integration. Got lots more for you. Don't go away.
To thrive in today's dynamic business environment, you need the right partner. With a partner protecting your interests, you can focus on productivity. It's amazing where the right partnership can develop and how far it can take you. Contact us today. Digicel Business, complete solutions for your needs.
My name is Dr. Sam Suhail. I'm the Associate Dean for Academic and Student Affairs here at the American University of Barbados. We're proud to say that our pre-medical education, medical education programs are offered on the beautiful island of Barbados in the West Indies. The classrooms are set up with some of the most advanced technology. We'd like you to be part of our community. Our website is www.aubmed.org.
If you want the eyes and ears of your customers, then there's only one place, CaribVision, the authentic channel for all things Caribbean, bringing you Caribbean news, Caribbean sports, Caribbean entertainment, Caribbean travel, and festivals. Advertise on the CaribVision platform, reaching across the Caribbean in over 21 countries, and now in the U.S. market on Cablevision in the New York tri-state area, and coming soon to Canada and the United Kingdom. Email us at sales@cmccaribbean.com. CaribVision, the eyes and ears of the Caribbean.
If you are serious about business, then log on and participate in Business Advantage. Every Monday, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., log on to www.aubmed.org www.niceradio.info. Business Advantage inspires you to believe that the man who wins is the one who thinks he can. Business Advantage with host Jerry George, mentoring the next generation of Caribbean entrepreneurs. 8 to 10 p.m. Mondays on www.niceradio.info. For further information, email caribbeaninformationhub@gmail.com. Like the Business Advantage Facebook page or call 1-784-456-5967 to participate.
It's the end of the month again. My son's rent is due.
Sending money to your children studying overseas is easy. Western Union's safe and reliable service lets you transfer money everywhere in the world.
My son is doing well at school. That makes me proud.
Western Union, moving money for better.
Agents in Grenada, Rennick Thompson and Company, with locations in Grenville, Sauterres, Guave, Grand Anse, the Carenage, Bruce Street, and Carriacou.
To thrive in today's dynamic business environment, you need the right partner. Digicel Business is that partner, offering you the flexibility you need to flourish. It's amazing where the right partnership can develop and how far it can take you. Contact us today. Digicel Business, complete solutions for your needs.
Welcome back to this edition of Time to Face the Facts, where we're looking at OECS integration and we're looking at just what has happened so far and where we need to take this. When we went out, Paula, we were looking at some of the impediments that you faced, and you were talking about that.
Well, in the early days, most people didn't know how to install those products. So when we sold it to a country, we would go in and do the installation. And we had problems entering the OECS countries at that time. It's not so necessary right now, because with technology, we get by email, we get orders in all different fashions and ways. So it's not necessary to go into the islands. And now that people know how to install, we can find persons within the region to install the various products. So entering was not as easy as it is now, but I think right now within the OECS and the smaller island, the St. Vincent, Grenada, Dominica, in terms of doing business and exporting to them, shipping is easy. The other islands, shipping is difficult. So we have not had a shipping system from the time I was born that I know of that reaches the islands like St. Kitts and Antigua within a day, or Nevis and Anguilla and certain areas. So you find that these smaller countries will actually purchase out of the United States before they purchase out of the OECS.
But
with
that
their own
brings,
region.
you're talking about a single market. There is a market.
There is a
because a
market.
market exists where there's a demand for products.
Yes.
So are we saying that there aren't people who are willing to invest in those aspects of the market, or don't they know that this exists?
I think with the shipping, it's, which comes first. It has been discussed. It has been discussed at the OECS level to try and get funding to fix up some of the old schooners and get things moving again and shipping. But we need to look at that as a serious facility that we have to implement if we are going to export among ourselves as a region. Because most of us will not be, some of our products will not be exported outside of the region. And outside of Barbados, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, which are countries we have difficulty exporting to in any case because of certain barriers that they put up still. So we have to work on the shipping aspect.
Well, let me put it this way, speaking from a businessman's perspective. If a businessman is still uncertain that there is a free market, that the goods and the service can be taken to each country freely, do you think he's going to invest? You said that there's a lack of understanding in terms of people, education.
It's a very high investment.
Right, but he needs to be absolutely sure that he's going to invest, and then when his boat pulls into a port, that he's not going to be told something foolish.
Correct, but at the same time, you have people saying, well, there is no shipping, so what should we do? And the businessman is saying, well, I haven't seen the shipping, so what should we do? And that's where we need integration again in
No,
a certain...
the businessman I'm talking about here is the person who will invest in the ships.
Yes, and you're quite right. He's wondering, should I invest that sort of money when I'm not sure what the exports are? And at the same time, the persons manufacturing are saying, where is the shipping line? Because we can't export it because there's no shipping line. So which comes first, the egg or the chicken?
But this is 2014, we're in the 21st century.
We're in the 21st century. Yes, we know we're in the 21st century, but it still hasn't happened, and that has been going on for a long time. In fact, in the early days, banana days, all the Maria, Santa Maria, whatever, the 4 boats that we had, and we were plying the waters, and it was easier then to get from one place to the other than it is now.
Listen, you mentioned quite in passing of the conundrum that the economic citizenship of St. Kitts, of Dominica, soon Antigua, and well,
and might be St. Lucia.
St. Lucia, allows foreign people access to all of these countries, probably easier than
our own people.
Our own people. Does that make sense?
Well, again, I think it's because we look at our people from a negative point of view. I come into Grenada, I'm from St. Lucia, hey, let's, they look at you, let's treat you differently, right? Somebody else, okay, we have tourism and we want to welcome everybody, but I also want to welcome all the people in the region into St. Lucia. Come spend your money, come on holiday, invest in business, but we are not looking positively at our people. And I'm afraid that the face of our region will change dramatically, probably not in our time, but will change so dramatically that there will be probably no African descent in our face of the culture, and it'll be such a potpourri that our identification would have been lost.
Very good too.
I'm not pessimistic, because I think it's part of the reality that we face today as countries, that we live in a globalized environment. So the faces are likely to change.
But I think what Paul is saying is that you have a situation where a certain set of people are given more rights and more access.
Well, that I can't actually say yes to. I am not aware that they are given more rights and more access.
Perception,
it may be perception. And I think Paula touched on a critical note, which is the need to continue the education of our people. And I always look at the education from 2 sides. It has to be done in a sense that you give people information. It must also be done in a consultative fashion, so that you get back from people what they want from this integration process. You get back from them some of the practical difficulties that they face in integration. So as a business person, we say to you, there is freedom of movement of goods and services, and you have all of these rights. But what are some of the very real impediments that she faces? So we have to get that from
let me read one for you. Under the treaty, decisions of the authority of heads of government and the 4 ministerial committees of the organizations are binding on all member states. Is that what it says?
Correct.
But it doesn't look that way.
It is binding, but Jerry, go back to what I said. You're talking about sovereign states. The decisions are binding.
Signed.
No, the
so
decisions,
if it's binding,
yes,
it's binding.
And they do implement. No, they do implement. And I think that we can always build up the negative, but there is more positive than there is negative happening. There are more situations of compliance.
Remember I said to you a word just now? Remember I used the word just now, it's called perception.
Perception, yes. Yeah. But there are more instances of compliance than there are instances where countries don't comply. And the manner in which they negotiate is one that allows a country to put on the table very early if they're having difficulty in a particular area. They come to the table and they work it out.
But here's where the communication is lacking. One sec. Here's where the communication is lacking. Talk about education. So you go and you agree that we're going to do this thing.
Yeah.
So you go back and you have a problem. But the people of the country are never told that you're having this issue why it's not implemented. I'm talking about the perception that these people are just talkers, they're not implementers. Mm-hmm. Why aren't the citizens of the country told, listen, we have signed on to X, but we're experiencing this problem in making it happen, but give us until Y and we'll make it happen. Why aren't we told that?
You want me to answer?
Well, why don't you press them to
nationally
find out?
political position, and
I
can't
agree,
do that.
but these are political issues, whether we like it or
Yes,
not. We can't stop them.
but it's also, you're asking me to answer a question
well,
that would be internal and not one to which I can commit. But I'll say this. What I think we will see with time and with successes in integration, that's what's important. Because when people see success, when people see that they can in fact move, when the Vincentian says, I am able to establish my business in St. Lucia without a problem, I can in fact work, and I have not been hassled by immigration, I have not been asked to produce a work permit, I can drive on the driver's license that I came from St. When people see those things actually happening, I think you will see gradually a change in that perception, and it's critical, it's fundamental, I can't disagree with you on that. People see what is happening, but they also see what is not happening. And sometimes what is not happening is so very important for them that they focus on that. But a critical thing about OECS integration is that it is about everybody. Notice that Paula mentioned the difficulty that she faced at one point in time. Not all of the workers that she needs are skilled workers. For the OECS integration process, it is about movement of people, irrespective of your level of skill. So she can get from the person who is going to sweep the floor in the awning factory to the persons who have more engineering skills, more technical skills. So are you saying that
by and large, what the OECS has agreed to is better than what Caricom? Because Caricom basically says artisans, journalists and so forth.
Yeah, but I don't put OECS and Caricom up against one another as better or worse. I think the approaches by the two organizations have been different. So that the OECS has said in the revised Treaty of Bastille that there is to be free movement of all citizens of the OECS. Freedom of movement of OECS citizens shall be secured. That is the wording of the treaty. Caricom agreed on a different approach. While they agreed, because if you look at Article 45 of the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, you will see that free movement is a goal. And then they point in Article 46 to certain categories that can move, and gradually they are implementing and extending the numbers. For the OECS, we've used a different approach. But I would not say that one is better or worse.
No, but one is better. You mightn't want to say, but I'm going to say it.
No, but
if Caricom says only a certain category of people could move, and the OECS says everybody can move, there's no question of good, better, or best.
Perhaps for you, from a personal perspective, it's better. Perhaps for countries in Caricom, it is better. Still using your word, it is better for them to implement in a gradual fashion.
The customer is who at the end of the day determines whether it's better or not. As a customer, that's how I want to see it.
The OECS, the way they've done it, is much simpler, easier, and better.
Thank you.
Than
to the business from which you joined.
Okay. So from that perspective, because if you look at Caricom and their requirements for CVQ in place of work permits.
What is CVQ, just for the viewers?
It's the, let me just make sure I get it, Caribbean Vocational Qualification, which is being given now at schools and universities. But for my existing business, if I wanted it to go outside of the OECS, I can't get it for my existing workers who've been in the job for years.
And who know the job.
And yes, and who knows the job. They cannot get that document to go somewhere else. But within the OECS, we can travel much more easily and freely. The fact that you can use your ID card and you can use your driver's license to drive in another state, and we were driving in the States with our license long before we were doing it here. Those are very positive issues that have come out of the OECS integration, and it has yet to come out under the Caricom section. So I would say, OECS.
Well, there you go. You have somebody giving you a round of applause. but it really comes to, you're right, the question of people recognizing success is important. Very, very important aspect of it. So I'm going to come back to some of these. I just want to kind of lay the basis of some of what we're talking. The question of harmonization. And I mentioned this to you off the set, because I believe that we are currently in the midst of the biggest failure of harmonization. And it has to do with Ebola and chikungunya. That each state seems to be doing its own thing. And yet, as far as I remember reading here, if I could find it quickly, you know, on the question of harmonization, I'll find it. But it speaks to this question of there being harmonization. We have 2 diseases in the region that requires the region to speak with one voice. It is not happening.
But Caricom recently convened a meeting to deal with the very issue that you have raised, and I remember the chief.
Let me just correct something. I said 2 diseases in the region. I'm talking about chikungunya. Because
and
Ebola is not in the region. But the threat
of Ebola.
Nonetheless.
Yes, and the chief medical officers and chief technical medical officers met at the Caricom level, and it was so urgent they had to convene it via VC, and they know...
urgent?
In terms of action is really? Urgent, yes.
You want me to tell you when that meeting took place? Because I was in Trinidad and I went to the press conference weeks after this thing really, after the WHO and everybody had said it was urgent. Yes, that meeting was just 2 weeks ago.
Yes, it was.
So it was, as far as I'm concerned, the response was not urgent. And that's my first issue.
But it was harmonized.
But it was harmonized.
It was
There's
harmonized?
a question of timing
What
that
was
you
harmonized?
raised. There's a question of timing that you raised. But the point that I think what Safi is raising is that, in fact, you did have a regional response in the context of Caricom. So it's not fair to say that there wasn't a harmonized approach to dealing with the matter. They did, in fact, come together and discuss what they're going to do with respect to Ebola. So that is harmonization.
Yeah,
if you're talking about timing, that's a different issue.
But where is the harmonized action? We're not saying they didn't meet and talk together. Where is the harmonized action? St. Vincent says we're going to ban. St. Lucia has said one thing. Dominica has said something else. I'm not quite sure where Grenada comes in on this. There is no, well, Grenada hasn't said anything. There's no harmonization as far as looking at the situation is concerned.
But they have spoken to develop, to implementing an isolation policy as a region. I think what happened is persons, you refer to the timing, and the timing may have caused persons to go at it individually, but they're now looking at it as a region and speaking to an isolation policy as a region. So the implementation is currently ongoing, where before persons would have spoken to it as an individual state as they become affected or as they see a threat to their member state, but it's actually on the table.
To illustrate how late this was, the first scare in the region of a passenger arriving in Trinidad and Tobago, the plane landed in St. Lucia, and the alarm was raised after that plane arrived in Trinidad and Tobago. So you talk about urgent? Are you getting my point? And this was very early days in the whole scenario. So I am saying, how does the OECS integration unit and the OECS integration demonstrate that on a serious issue like this, that there is real concerted action? Maybe the harmonization sounds pretty, but we're talking about concerted action.
And what is the action? And what is the action? Because we as a people need to know.
Thank you, that's my point. We need to know that they're going to stand in one place on this issue.
And I think that is precisely what they have agreed in terms of getting the isolation policy, at least that they've agreed on, and taking action in that respect. The question, it always comes back to information, I think. Perhaps the response was delayed, late reaction, but I think that once the countries agree, this is not a situation in which there can be a slow response. Once you've agreed on the policy, it is very real. You mentioned Ebola is not here yet, but we have to prepare because, again, as I mentioned, we live in a globalized environment. And as I said to you earlier when we were offset, it's not a matter of picking a country and saying, I will prevent people of that nationality from coming in. The response must be one that recognizes the extent to which people move throughout the world. And the fact that someone may start out in a country thousands of miles away from here, transit through other countries, and end up in the region. So that is the kind of response that we would have to arrive at. But again, you sometimes have countries starting out at different points, and what's important is for them to come to that particular area of convergence and say, this is the policy that we're going to implement, and do it in support of one another. And that is what happens.
But what leverage do you have? For example, you see something like this happening. Does the head of the unit totally have the whatever it takes to call up and say, listen, folks, we feel that there's needed to be something clear on this?
Clearly.
Because if somebody doesn't do that, it's not what every country is going to think, I'm going to operate on my own steam and my own speed.
No, they don't. If we, not necessarily on the health thing, but in a general context, countries, as I said, countries do adhere and do comply with the revised Treaty of Basel. I can tell you that. Let me
I'll let you come back when we come back. We just have to take the break.
Okay.
And on this edition of Time to Face the Facts, we're looking at OECS integration, some of the issues and challenges. Don't go away.
To thrive in today's dynamic business environment, you need the right partner. Digicel Business is that partner, offering you the flexibility you need to flourish. Our scalable solutions will increase your effectiveness and efficiency while enabling workforce mobility. Large or small, you can't hide from potential threats to your business. With a partner protecting your interests, you can focus on productivity. It's amazing where the right partnership can develop and how far it can take you. Contact us today. Digicel Business, complete solutions for your needs.
If you are serious about business, then log on and participate in Business Advantage. Every Monday, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., log on to www.niceradio.info. Business Advantage inspires you to believe that the man who wins is the one who thinks he can. Business Advantage with host Jerry George, mentoring the next generation of Caribbean entrepreneurs. 8 to 10 p.m. Mondays on www.niceradio.info. For further information, email CaribbeanInformationHub@gmail.com. Like the Business Advantage Facebook page or call 1-784-456-5967 to participate.
If you want the eyes and ears of your customers, then there's only one place. Caribvision, the authentic channel for all things Caribbean, bringing you Caribbean news, Caribbean sports, Caribbean entertainment, Caribbean travel, and festivals. Advertise on the Caribvision platform, reaching across the Caribbean in over 21 countries, and now in the U.S. market on Cablevision in the New York tri-state area, and coming soon to Canada and the United Kingdom. Email us at sales@cmccaribbean.com. Caribvision, the eyes and ears of the Caribbean.
My name is Dr. Sam Suhail. I'm the Associate Dean for Academic and Student Affairs here at the American University of Barbados. We're proud to say that our pre-medical education, medical education programs are offered on the beautiful island of Barbados in the West Indies. The classrooms are set up with some of the most advanced technology. We'd like you to be part of our community. Our website is www.aubmed.org.
When you send money with Western Union, you're sending a smile, a gift, a hello, or even support. It's a fast and convenient way to stay connected with loved ones around the world, or even across the Caribbean. From any of our convenient agent locations, depend on Western Union to send your money quickly and reliably. Western Union, moving money for better.
Agents in Grenada, Rennick Thompson and Company, with locations in Grenville, Sauterres, Guave, Granans, the Carinage, Bruce Street, and Carriacou.
How soon will we see signs of real integration in the OECS? That's discussion on this edition of Time to Face the Facts. Following you going out, you're making a point?
You were talking about the extent to which the staff of the Commission have some leverage with member states. And I was saying that, in fact, when it comes to taking initiatives on a range of matters that affect member states, you can have action being taken, whether within the Commission, the staff of the Commission, or from a member state perspective, so that you do not have to wait for one or the other to act. In the case that you mentioned, you were talking specifically about the response to the chikungunya and the Ebola and so on. But in general, in the way that the OECS operates, it may be a matter that is put on the table by a member state, or St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Lucia, depending on the issue, or it may well be something that originates within the Commission because we have the mandate to continue monitoring what is happening in member states and to advise where it's necessary to advise. So it can come, the initiative can come from one or the other.
Did you feel any urge to act on both chikungunya and Ebola?
Well, my unit would not be responsible for that, but we have persons who deal with the health sector. Mm-hmm. And so clearly it would have been for them to respond and to advise. And bear in mind also that, as Safia stated, the countries were not operating even solely as OECS. Even solely as Caricom, because PAHO was also involved. So it was that big response, that coming together to deal with it, because it really cannot be a matter for a single country or for that small grouping that is OECS.
Okay, just for folks to win, we have the numbers on the screen at the moment, and you can call us, and we'll take your calls at this point in the program. Now, let me just read one of the critique of the treaty. The treaty has an institutional structure that can be utilized in an economic union, but it does not have the power to govern such a union. Isn't that?
In what way?
Well,
explain. Is that your question?
No. I'm reading from a document here, and one of the critique.
But to govern in what sense? well,
I suspect to make things happen.
But no, if you understand the structure of the treaty, you have the authority of heads of government, the ministerial council, the assembly, the commission, which is administrative, the economic affairs council. Remember earlier you were talking about the ability of the authority of heads of government and the council of ministers to bind member states to certain action. That is there. There is also provision in the treaty relating to the settlement of disputes. So if it is a case that two countries have some dispute regarding implementation of obligations under the treaty, there are provisions relating to that. And there are provisions relating to action that can be taken in the case where countries do not implement.
Let me read you the next statement. The OECS is basically an intergovernmental organization with collective decision-making ability, but without the force to give authority to its decision.
Yeah, because as I said, and that's not quite correct. If you're looking at the OECS as a group of sovereign countries, correct. That is what they are. There is always political debate, and the treaty recognizes that by ensuring that where there is difficulty, where there are disputes, which is what I think the person is pointing to, you have several methods by which you can resolve them. And they always start with consultation. Because again, what would you do with the member state? You're going to throw it in jail? I mean, you have to be realistic. And the reality is that there are means by which countries settle disputes. So consultation, that's where you begin. You can go to mediation, so you get someone in who can help you to solve the dispute, or good officers. You can go to arbitration, and ultimately you can go to the Supreme Court.
That two countries are having a dispute. But
that is generally where that issue comes up.
The way I'm looking at it is not even that. It's just a country just is lapsed in following through on their commitment.
In which case, you're talking about the application of the implementation of their obligations under the treaty, right. And another country can bring them up in that respect. So you have obligations under the treaty. You're not implementing. I am being affected, and we decided on a country-by-country basis, or country-to-country.
Has that ever happened?
It happens. You see, what I think a lot that is not visible is deemed not to happen.
Why I ask that question? Because a country might decide, boy, okay, that is not my turn now, but I'm not pushing too hard on this because when I come in the same position, I want them to be easier on me. You know, you
explain. No.
A country might realize that that is happening, all right, but might not be forceful on the other country, because if you figure leave some room so that when I want to take a stand like that, I'm not forced either.
I would say in the time that I have been working with these countries, that is generally not the case. And that's why I keep saying to you, there is more often compliance than there is not. the countries agree, and I would admit they don't always adhere to timelines. They're not able to. They experience difficulties. But it is good faith
that's the point. I feel you're making excuses.
I'm not making excuses.
They're not able to.
No,
but
I don't
they
have
agreed
to.
to.
No, they agree to. They agree to because, you see, in the same way, you may have provisions in the treaty that establish, for example, I'll give you a classic case. And this is where I was telling you earlier on that the OECS is in fact pushing the envelope. You would see in the treaty that there is legislative competence, and countries agree to delegate the competence to act, for the organization to act in certain ways. But the question has arisen with respect to the constitutional difficulties that this may pose, and whether in fact this runs contrary to the constitutions of member states. But they did not allow that to slow them down. They agreed that notwithstanding the difficulties and notwithstanding the possible challenges, that they would find a way of ensuring that when they agree on legislation for purposes of the OECS, that they would ensure that the legislation is passed within a short period of time, which is a 3-month period. They agreed, notwithstanding the fact that there is a potential impediment in the treaty. These are not countries that are about to say, okay, yes, we agreed, but you know, I'm gonna slow down here because somebody's not doing it. And they do take each other to task. They sit at the table and they work their difficulties out. And that is what is not seen by the general public, but it does happen.
I think we have to bear in mind, though, that as Emma was saying, some countries are far advanced than others. And everybody's at different levels, like everybody's at different levels of education.
But I don't understand this business of the OECS far advanced than others. That is something I'm not getting into my system.
Everybody, all the islands are not at the same point, especially
well,
legislatively.
It can't be that far apart.
It is a fact.
That they're that far apart?
That not necessarily far apart, but St. Lucia might have 3 things to do to achieve this, somebody else might have 6 things to do to achieve the same thing, and take a little longer than we can because of whatever the impediments are. And there are impediments, so it takes a little longer. What we have to continue to do is to make sure that we implement at least 2 or 3 within a particular period of time, and push those countries to implement it so that it is easier for all of us.
But in some cases, and I believe in all cases, they are low-hanging fruit.
And the free movement of people was one of those low-hanging fruit. Some work had been done at the Caricom level, and very quickly member states realized this is something that we can move on, and persons can feel the real benefit of economic union by being able to take advantage and move across the region as seamlessly and hassle-free as possible. So that is something that they pointed to very early, and member states immediately start to work towards. So there are some low-hanging fruits that have been implemented.
You have to understand that quick for the citizen and quick for you are 2 different things. And that is where we need to get some kind of a merge in terms of understanding what is quick. And you as a business person realize that in business, speed is it.
It is very, very important. And it's frustrating for us to be doing business where a lot of things are not up to standard in terms of the international requirements, you know, the use of credit cards to pay government, you know, I mean, or through customs. There's so many things that can ease doing business that we are taking too long to implement, and that can be a detraction from growth of the companies.
And not just the company, the countries.
Well, it's
because you mentioned a very important
the
point.
companies are the ones who trade, not the country.
No,
so the success of the companies means the success of the country.
That's what I mean.
Right, yeah.
You know?
So these are the kind of things, and you'd be surprised, the legislation, and having attended many meetings with government, legislation is a key problem in St. Lucia. We don't have the facilities, and we are not at the level that we are behind, basically, in terms of legislation and updating our legislation to where we should be. So that creates a problem within the OECS islands as well.
Let me throw another question in terms of making this one economic space. The question of e-commerce. Is any business today that's worth their salt would recognize this. So let us take the union together. You cannot use a credit card and get and receive payments and monies through the system easily. Is this something that you have down on the agenda to fix?
Yes.
Because if you talk about one area needing speed,
Yes.
that needs speed.
Agreed.
We have a call from St. Lucia, so let's take the calls first. The calls get preference. Good evening, St. Lucia. Thanks for calling. Hello?
Good evening.
Yes, good evening.
Yeah, you sound like a Jamaican, right?
No, sir.
Okay, good. All right. Good evening, Paula and Miss Isaac and the other lady. All right, yeah. I normally travel to St. Vincent by the Independence. Right, coming from St. Lucia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they have this the OECS Unity thing. And you could travel with your ID card. But what I realize is that whether with the ID card or with the passport, you still have the same red tape. You just carry a different document, but the red tape, you know, it takes for hours to clear customs, you know. So it shouldn't be so, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, right? We go to celebrate their independence. We do that every year, and for the past 6 years, nothing has changed, you know. They know we're coming, right? They prepare the whole year in advance, and the customs problem is the same thing, right? So that's not about the people planning all the big positions in the OECS. You have to look at, as Paula said, the layman. He is the one that's been doing all the traveling to do business, you see. Now when, let's say, 40 guys St. Lucia on bikes to go St. Vincent, that's sports tourism, right? That's revenue coming into St. Vincent, okay? So they should make a way open so that we can get in very easy, right? Now also, there's a link between St. Lucia, Martinique, Dominica, Guam, which is Express Diesel, I think, right? Then there's a link between St. Vincent, Grenada, Trinidad. They have their boats traveling. There is no link between St. Lucia and St. Vincent, okay? And that's a problem. Once you put that link, if those ministers and those government officials realize that, if you put that link, you join the whole Caribbean together, okay? So while they're debating on who gets in what position, right, in the big jobs, the layman can travel up and down and do business, right? Then you can take 10 to 15 years to sort out your business, right? So that's where the problem is, you know. That's where the main problem is.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
You made your point.
Thank you.
And I think the caller has made a very important point. This business, and again, I know somebody's going to tell me this question of sovereignty because I think that's an excuse that's overused. This business of how much documentation you need coming through is incredibly inefficient. And as far as I'm concerned, unnecessary.
But you know, Jerry, nobody was going to talk about sovereignty. We are going to tell you that, in fact, we recognize that. But I'll let Safia talk on that because that's one of the big areas for us and very important.
Right, Safia? You're on the floor.
Well, the caller pointed to the customs issue, and we have been talking free movement in terms of immigration and facilitating travel. We have not really talked about persons moving with goods, but the treaty makes provision for that also. And I know you're going to hit us again with timelines, but again, you have 6 member states, 7 member states that are moving towards a single economic space. And the movement of goods within that space is a critical factor that we must take into consideration. And we are currently working in terms of getting that regime together where once good enter within this space, once it's in any of the member states, it's allowed to move without impediments to another member state.
One of the things that we have tacitly accepted via Paula is that we don't really have a lot of goods moving yet. So suppose it really happens, it starts to move.
But it's not even about the fact that we have or do not have a lot of goods moving yet. It is that people move and often move with goods.
Right.
And so the difficulty to which the caller pointed, which is that you may clear immigration quickly, but customs is a bottleneck. So that is not what we want. And therefore, supporting customs in being able to do their risk assessment, for example. So you know whether you need to search. Paula was talking about using machines, so you scan bags going through. So there are options and there are ways in which it can be addressed. And the fact is it is being addressed, because we recognize that apart from when we talk about the free circulation, which is a big chunk of work to be done because it has implications for your harmonization of customs legislation and modernization, use of information technology and so on. But just ensuring that customs officers, in the same way that we've trained immigration officers to deal with the movement of people, we're also working with customs so that you ensure that your customs officers similarly understand that you can be a bottleneck if you do not allow people to move. Similarly, assessing risk properly.
Your colleague who should have been sitting on this set is on the telephone line. Dr. Patrick Antoine. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, you should have been here.
I should have been there, comrade, and I want to extend my apologies to you.
You just barely saved it.
We had some logistic confusion.
Okay.
Which prevented me from being there with you.
Okay.
I just want to say that certainly the caller who just called in relation to the issues of ease of access between the country makes an important point. And I think that justifiably so, our citizens have come to expect that where we promise or commit that these things are going to be forthcoming as a consequence of the economic union, where they're not enjoyed, I think they are well within their right to expect them. And certainly, as the caller has done, to complain about them. I think importantly, what we see happening now with a number of the rulings and judgments internationally in relation to where commitments are made at the level of heads, certainly at the level of treaties, that whether the arrangements are in place or not, that there's an expectation that those are going to be enjoyed. Places and orders, as Elmer Jean has said, to bring our administrative arrangements, our customs, our immigration along with us. And I want to say that coming out of what I see as a round of meetings that we've just concluded, that the delivery of these benefits to the OECS certainly, and also to benefit from those arrangements, that those are going to be enhanced. But you also make an important point in terms of low-hanging fruit, Jerry. And I agree that there are a whole host of low-hanging fruit that we need to start working on. And in fact, the OECS in its new dispensation, certainly the project that Elmer Jean is the head of in relation to trade and integration, that we're going to be focusing on a lot of these. Let me just give you a couple of examples. We're talking about the ability for you to get in your car in St. Vincent and subject to what we agree on insurance, to be able to get into that, take it on a boat to Grenada and drive in Grenada.
Yes.
Those are the kinds of benefits that when we do our walk around, people are telling us they want to enjoy. The ability, for instance, and I believe it was mentioned earlier, to drive on your St. Vincent driver's license in any of the OECS countries. Those are the benefits that people are coming to expect, and we're going to have to deliver on those.
Yep.
The comrade talked about the fact that every year they go to St. Vincent for independence or whatever. And he properly identifies that as sports tourism. There is no reason why arrangements should not be put in place so that when someone steps off the boat or the aircraft in St. Vincent, they are pre-cleared. There's nothing preventing that. And people are coming to expect that, and we're going to have to step up to the plate and deliver those. And I just wanted to really make the point, though, that the OECS Commission, which is the staff and the ambassadors and certainly the people working within the ministry, we are going to be making a more concerted push to ensure that we deliver these benefits faster. It is not good enough for us to, as it were, promise that these benefits are going to be forthcoming, but they flow in the way that they flowed before. which is they come, some now and some later. We are going to be working on this, and I think that your program has certainly highlighted these are the critical issues that people have come to expect of us.
Before you go, I think you raised a very important point very early, and this came out of the situation with Shanik Mary and the CCJ and Barbados, etc., that the court ruled that once, and you said it, that once you had agreed to take action, that you're a little bit liable. And I think this business of telling me that time and so forth, the reality, there's a legality to the treaty.
Jerry, I think the OECS Commission in the dispensation that we're in now, we have come to be guided at a regional level in the context of community rights by that decision by the CCJ. And I believe that although the decision took place in the context of Caricom, we have heeded that call.
That's right.
In ensuring that in the OECS we go farther, much faster than the rest of the region in ensuring that we don't have those kinds of impediments, and where they do arise, that we solve them expeditiously. And I believe that all the prime ministers are on the same page where this is concerned.
That's it? I'm sure you would call us back if you need to, right?
Yes, well, comrade, good program, and I just want to see that the OECS is moving, and if we have a program in a year, you will see the progress during that time.
I'll probably hold you to that. Thanks so very much, Dr. Antoine. That's Dr. Patrick Antoine. He should have been with us on set this evening, had some difficulties. But let's take a break at this point in time on this edition of Time to Face the Facts. Don't go away, we've got lots more to come.
If you are serious about business, then log on and participate in Business Advantage. Every Monday, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., log on to www.niceradio.info. Business Advantage inspires you to believe that the man who wins is the one who thinks he can. Business Advantage with host Jerry George, mentoring the next generation of Caribbean entrepreneurs. 8 to 10 p.m. Mondays on www.niceradio.info. For further information, email caribbeaninformationhub@gmail.com. Like the Business Advantage Facebook page or call 1-784-456-5967 to participate.
It's the end of the month again. My son's rent is due.
Sending money to your children studying overseas is easy. Western Union's safe and reliable service lets you transfer money everywhere in the world.
My son is doing well at school. That makes me proud.
Western Union, moving money for better.
Agents in Grenada, Rennick Thompson and Company, with locations in Grenville, Sauterres, Guave, Grand Anse, the Carnage, Bruce Street, and Carriacou.
To thrive in today's dynamic business environment, you need the right partner. Digicel Business is that partner, offering you the flexibility you need to flourish. It's amazing where the right partnership can develop and how far it can take you. Contact us today. Digicel Business, complete solutions for your needs.
My name is Dr. Sam Suhail. I'm the Associate Dean for Academic and Student Affairs here at the American University of Barbados. We're proud to say that our pre-medical education, medical education programs are offered on the beautiful island of Barbados in the West Indies. The classrooms are set up with some of the most advanced technology. We'd like you to be part of our community. Our website is www.aubmed.org.
If you want the eyes and ears of your customers, then there's only one place, CaribVision, the authentic channel for all things Caribbean, bringing you Caribbean news, Caribbean sports, Caribbean entertainment, Caribbean travel, and festivals. Advertise on the CaribVision platform, reaching across the Caribbean in over 21 countries, and now in the U.S. market on Cablevision in the New York tri-state area, and coming soon to Canada and the United Kingdom. Email us at sales@cmccaribbean.com. CaribVision, the eyes and ears of the Caribbean.
To thrive in today's dynamic business environment, you need the right partner. With a partner protecting your interests, you can focus on productivity. It's amazing where the right partnership can develop and how far it can take you. Contact us today. Digicel Business, complete solutions for your needs.
Welcome back. This is Time to Face the Facts. We're looking at OECS integration. OECS integration, question for you. Does Caricom recognize the Treaty of Chaguaramas? And if so, how is that manifested?
The Treaty of Bastille?
Bastille, sorry.
The Treaty of Bastille.
No,
Good question. We are at present working on having the OECS Economic Union and the revised Treaty of Bastille accommodated within Chaguaramas. When you recall, in terms of times, you had Caricom established in 1973. You had OECS coming in 1981. And the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas came into force, but did not expressly recognize the OECS organization.
We have a caller from St. Vincent. Caller from St. Vincent, thanks for calling.
Hi, Jerry. Good program so far. I am listening with interest and all this talk about OECS unity. I take it that we have seen or hearing about OECS unity through the eyes of the women tonight. I'm always fascinated by Mrs. Isaacs, the way she presents herself, except that she doesn't want to touch the political side of things. And we really can't get away from that. I remember our own Sir James Mitchell with all this big thing. Remember, I enjoyed some of that, you know. And sometimes you think you're only traveling, eating and drinking, you're going on a nice time. But it's about time that we, you know, all these things that we've been talking about over the years become effective. I am happy that so much is said about the OECS. And I think it is only fitting that we might be the ones to set the pace for the larger region. We're talking about Caricom. So I think we're on the right track. But I'll tell you something. I heard Mrs. Isaac speak about the internal affairs of the different islands, which is so true. And here's where the politics comes in. I remember going to Nevis almost 20 years ago, and someone, my chauffeur asked me, where are you from? So I said, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And he said to me, I wish I could say that as a musician, because we know St. Kitts Nevis had the problems. Thank God we are a plural country. I would hope that we don't have those kinds of political problems. But I do agree that internally speaking, there are a lot of obstacles. I also remember in St. Lucia, I was coming to St. Lucia to see my son. So I have roots in St. Lucia, so to speak. And the immigration officer, a young guy, asked me how long I'm going to listen. I'm just here to see my son. Right? And he started making a big fuss. I said, I can call my prime minister, me and John Compton at the time. I can, because in St. Lucia, would you believe it? I covered elections in St. Lucia, and I noticed that they were still reminding St. Lucians that Compton is from Canawan. So here we go. So I just thought I'd show this out.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you very much for calling. I think the last bit is amusing, but it still represents some of the latency in terms of our moving forward.
Well, should that be a question, though, now, when you travel within the OECS? How long are you staying?
It should be a question anywhere.
No, it's not. It's not a question that is currently asked of OECS nationals.
But it should not be asked also when you travel for Caricom. Again, the Shanique Myrie case has brought that to the fore. Okay? But we have another caller, so the phone lines are going. Thank you very much for calling. Hello? Caller?
Hi, good night to everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening, good evening. Good evening.
Go ahead, please, caller.
Yes. I have listened.
Caller, if you're listening to something else, could you please just listen to the phone?
And
caller, okay, could you just listen to the phone line, please? You're being distracted.
All right. Yes, I'm there now. I listen quite intensely to your program, and it's really an interesting one.
Thank you.
I would like to ask a question, though. would somebody coming from Grenada, could they come to St. Vincent, see a very beautiful piece of land, buy it and build a home without any obstruction or any problem?
That's a question?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll answer you, okay? Thank you for calling. Very powerful question, the question of the right to own land.
I have to thank the caller for the question because that hadn't come up in relation to what rights.
No, but it leads into a very interesting area of the debate.
Because the discussion about access to land started at Caricom, where within the context of Caricom, member states were required to open up all these rights to persons to have the right to access the land, to do business and so forth. The OECS, being the smaller islands, thought at the time they needed to look at how land access to their citizens primarily. So they
noticed that you've been very, very guarded in what you're saying.
No, I'm not being guarded. I'm just making sure that I
give it
right. So given consideration to land access to their citizens and the limited amount of land that the smaller islands had, they took a reservation and asked Caricom to give them some time to look at the issue internally. But they took a decision that within OECS, they will offer OECS national access to land at that level, and it's on that principle that we are building in the OECS for persons to be able to have access to land, to conduct business, build land, build house.
OECS know that?
This is something that we have been talking about.
From a business point of view, if I have an investor coming into St. Lucia, whether from any of the OECS islands, I would expect them to buy land.
Yeah,
and I would expect them
it's
to
part of
invest
the
some money.
process.
It's part of the process. So I don't really see any major problem in terms of somebody wanting to come in and purchase land, whether it's for business or for their own housing, you know.
For residential
But okay, look, we have citizens by investment, right? So a Chinese or whoever could come and buy land much more easily than somebody. You see, these are the issues that I want us to come to face head on, you know.
Yeah, but I think when we are dealing with the issues, Jerry, we also need to state in a factual way, because I don't think much more easily is the correct thing. Yes, we have the citizenship by investment programs. Yes, there may be issues with nationals attempting to do business, but I don't think that we should readily tie the two things together.
Why not?
If they don't belong together. Now, the issue of access to land within the OECS, there was a decision made. So it's not a matter of an individual having to deal with individual member states on their own. There was a decision made at the Caricom level that for purposes of access to land, OECS countries would be allowed to have certain relations among themselves because land is finite and they are the smallest.
Just like the caller asked, do the people of the OECS know that?
As far as I know, people know. Perhaps your point is that we ought to do more to let people know more about what is happening with integration, and I agree with you on that. It's one of the things that we have accepted as a shortcoming of the work that we do. We do a significant amount of work, and a lot of time people don't know. And I'll use you were beating on the ECTEL case, on the fact that Antigua is not a part of it, and I think we can use it for a different purpose. We can use it to demonstrate one of the failings or the shortcomings that we've had at the level of public education, in the sense that a lot of people talk of the liberalization of telecommunications as though it had been done by Digicel, because before that it was only Lime in the market. We did not do enough to let people understand that there was an initiative, a very deliberate move by national governments to break to break into the telecom market, to liberalize telecommunications. It wasn't that Digicel stepped in and did anything for us. Similarly, everyday OECS citizens use the Eastern Caribbean dollar. They give not a thought to the central bank. Every day we have issues resolved by the court. They give not a thought to the fact that this is regional integration at work every day in their lives. We deal with the pharmaceutical procurement and people can purchase pharmaceuticals at lower price. Again,
Flip it.
we don't
Look at
think.
it another way. Because of all of that, people expect the rest.
We agree. We agree. And I think, as Patrick's Ambassador Antoine said earlier, member states understand that, and member states have given an undertaking to move with it. And it's not just about people. Huh? There's a reality that we face. We face a global situation that forces a certain response from countries. And that too is a factor.
We were discussing before the caller called in the question
OECS and
of
Caricom.
Caricom.
OECS, yes.
But you said something that Caricom allowed the OECS to make the land
No, in terms of, yes, in terms of when we say Caricom and OECS, there are instances in which the OECS countries seek particular dispensations within the Caricom grouping. One of the cases had to do with the establishment of the competition entity. According to the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, every country needed to establish a national regulatory authority to deal with anti-competitive business conduct. And the OECS countries sought from Caricom a special dispensation so that they could create one entity to serve as the national entity for all of the member states, for each of the member states. So there are times when that kind of decision is reached. And so you may hear us talking about OECS within Caricom. But we are talking about the relationship, and I think it's an important thing for us to discuss. The relationship between the OECS as an organization and Caricom as an organization. Because all of our member states, OECS, are members of Caricom.
Right.
Yet, and you have two movements, two regional integration movements. And if you look at the objectives, they are largely the same. What is different is where one is coming from and where the other is right now. The OECS has a lot that supports its deepening of integration. We've mentioned the institutions. We've mentioned the fact that they are more, there's perhaps more, they are more identical, they are closer, they appear, you know, there's a closer resemblance, more homogeneous, OECS, than in the wider context. So there's a lot. There's a basis on which the OECS can move faster, and recognizing also the potential for conflict if you don't agree on how you can move forward. The member states are now determining how within the Caricom Treaty you can carve out for the OECS the means by which it can continue to deepen its integration without violating
Vincent's not
Caricom.
done.
Okay.
We have another call from St. Vincent. St. Vincent, thank you for calling.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, do you think we are too careful? We were looking at too many things before we implement this integration. Do you think we are too careful? We're looking at if one country is on par with one another. We're looking at too many things. We should just move and go and achieve this integration.
Caller, thank you. I like your question.
You understand?
The question that the call is basically, to put it down, is there just too much red tape?
I would say it's reality. I know member states and citizens are anxious for us to implement what we have committed to. But the reality is, okay, you're looking at harmonization. You have spoken about the issue of harmonization. For us to harmonize, we have to recognize where we are in terms of different...
If callers take preference, we have a caller from St. Kitts. St. Kitts, go ahead, please.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It's very difficult for the ladies to sidestep the political questions. Let me tell you why I'm saying this. We have a situation in St. Kitts where the motion of no confidence has been called 3 times and it has been ignored. Now, 2 ministers from the OECS made reference to that, defending the reason or the rationale for not having the motion of no confidence. Now, why should I, a Kittitian or from the Caribbean have anything to do, why should I have any confidence in the OECS court if ministers, prime ministers, for example, are defending nonsense in St. Kitts? I'll listen off here.
Thank you very much, caller. That's a toughie.
That's pure politics. I'm not even going to
It's pure politics. It might be politics, but I think what they're saying is the CCJ something that we want?
Okay, we'll come back to finishing this, but you were the person answering the question, right? Finish the answer and we'll come back to the caller's question.
Because I was speaking to the issue where the caller was saying that we might be taking up too much time looking at our differences and not moving forward. But members, when we say to a citizen that they're entitled to this benefit and we have agreed to this, they expect it everywhere they go. So, and that is what takes the process a little longer than we would want the process to take. Because if I go into St. Vincent and it's treated differently than I'm treated in Grenada, I will take objection to this. Okay. So the differences in where member states are and the amount of processes they have to go through to get to the harmonized position is where some of the anxiety is in terms of citizens not getting the benefits as immediate as they would want to get the benefits. And I think that's how I want to leave the harmonization situation, because without understanding where member states are, it is difficult to come to a harmonized position and take it to implementation.
We can't ignore the caller who just asked the question of, well, if you lived in St. Kitts, I guess it's a very real situation for you. And it comes down to the question, doesn't situation like these cause people to lose confidence in the whole?
I know Alma Jean said she's not going to talk about it. I can never resist. I can never resist. I threaten to stay quiet when I speak. But yes, Jerry, there are situations that people face, and they think that, if this is the case, then I want nothing to do with regional integration. I always, and the caller is not correct, it's not difficult for me to sidestep the political questions. I don't deal with the political questions. I don't, when it comes to those issues, we simply would not address them head on. But I would say this. I would say that to the caller, there are situations that you will face. I don't think that you should tie it naturally and necessarily to the big regional integration picture. I will not respond in terms of which prime ministers may or may not have said certain things, but I think that the commitment that we have as a region to deepening integration and to delivering benefits to our citizens is a serious and significant one. And so, yes, there may be political difficulties internally, yes, there may be challenges, but that does not sidetrack the move towards regional integration.
Another call.
That's where I'm going to leave that.
It's a period when it happens like this. Caller, thank you for calling.
Okay, good night, good night.
Good night.
I would just like to ask this question. Now, a retired Vincentian returning to St. Lucia, how would they be treated as an OECS national returning to St. Lucia, retired, which means they would be able to have their home and to retire there? Would they be treated as if they were returning to their place of birth, their country of birth, or would they be treated differently? I'd listen off.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you, caller, for your question, if I may.
No, that's yours.
They will be treated as if they're in their home country, because the issue is that OECS has opened up for citizens and there's no distinction. Retired, worker, school age, there's no distinction as to who can move and live in a country as a national of that country. And
you realize what he's asking? He's saying, I've lived in St. Vincent, I have acquired and accumulated all of my stuff in St. Vincent. When I come back, do I have to go through customs and pay customs duties on my stuff that is mine? That's basically the question.
And I would say,
that's the answer.
Good. It still remains. They will be treated as how a St. Lucian national will be treated in a situation like that. Take, for example, some governments have concessions that they give to returning national. These concessions would be extended to persons moving from another member state
and
to
if it doesn't
retire.
happen, who does he appeal to?
Within every member state, there's an office of the commissioner to the OECS that is the link between the commission and the member state that they can lodge their complaints to if there are certain things. And at the OECS...
And you know how things move slowly. So 6 weeks pass, the guy's stuff is in the container on the port. I'm just saying what people are thinking, okay? What happens? In reality, the man wants to move into his house, and there's some degree of controversy here.
The issue of that person moving their goods freely, it's a simple process that is known to customs, and we continue the process of educating customs.
I'm going to take the break. I'm going to give you some chance to formulate the answer and come back. That's fair? It's time to face the facts. We're going to a break at this point, and we'll invite you to stay with us. Don't go away.
If you want the eyes and ears of your customers, then there's only one place, Carivision, the authentic channel for all things Caribbean, bringing you Caribbean news, Caribbean sports, Caribbean entertainment, Caribbean travel, and festivals. Advertise on the Carivision platform, reaching across the Caribbean in over 21 countries, and now in the U.S. market on Cablevision in the New York tri-state area, and coming soon to Canada and the United Kingdom. Email us at sales@cmccaribbean.com. Carivision, the eyes and ears of the Caribbean.
To thrive in today's dynamic business environment, you need the right partner. Digicel Business is that partner, offering you the flexibility you need to flourish. It's amazing where the right partnership can develop and how far it can take you. Contact us today. Digicel Business, complete solutions for your needs.
My name is Dr. Sam Suhail. I'm the Associate Dean for Academic and Student Affairs here at the American University of Barbados. We're proud to say that our pre-medical education, medical education programs are offered on the beautiful island of Barbados in the West Indies. The classrooms are set up with some of the most advanced technology. We'd like you to be part of our community. Our website is www.aubmed.org.
When you send money with Western Union, you're sending a smile, a gift, a hello, or even support. It's a fast and convenient way to stay connected with loved ones around the world, or even across the Caribbean. From any of our convenient agent locations, depend on Western Union to send your money quickly and reliably. Western Union, moving money for better.
Agents in Grenada, Rennick Thompson and Company, with locations in Grenville, Sauterres, Guave, Granans, the Carinage, Bruce Street, and Carriacou.
To thrive in today's dynamic business environment, you need the right partner. With a partner protecting your interests, you can focus on productivity. It's amazing where the right partnership can develop and how far it can take you. Contact us today. Digicel Business, complete solutions for your needs.
If you are serious about business, then log on and participate in Business Advantage. Every Monday, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., log on to www.niceradio.info. Business Advantage inspires you to believe that the man who wins is the one who thinks he can. Business Advantage with host Jerry George, mentoring the next generation of Caribbean entrepreneurs. 8 to 10 p.m. Mondays on www.niceradio.info. For further information, email caribbeaninformationhub@gmail.com. Like the Business Advantage Facebook page or call 1-784-456-5967 to participate.
Welcome back. This is Time to Face the Facts. We're trying to seek answers to the questions that you'd like to ask. You have a...
What I was saying, Jerry, before we broke, is persons are treated Under the regime that has been established, persons are treated as the national of that country. So whatever the processes the national of that country go through, then a national of another OECS member state will go through the same process. Take, for example, the same person who want to retire. They can retire to St. Lucia and get their social security benefits in St. Lucia. These are the things that we want persons to be able to know that they have the right to, and make sure that persons moving would have this information before they move, so that the hiccups that you're speaking to, they do not encounter it. Because the processes that a member state has in place for its nationals are the one that is applicable. So we encourage persons to know what the process is for the national of that country.
Let me go, because I realize that I have some issues with time. Mm-hmm. One of the issues was the question of foreign policy harmonization, which was really the cornerstone of the 1981 treaty. Mm-hmm. Do you think that we really have a harmonization of foreign policy as exists now?
You know, one thing that you have to understand about harmonization is that there's a difference between harmonization and uniformity. Difference, and it's important. It's important, yes, I'm going to explain it. Harmonization means that you converge, you bring things together. Uniformity means that everything has to be identical, and there's a difference in integration. So that when you talk of harmonization of foreign policy, it means that you are looking at those policies in relation to your foreign relations that can converge. Means that you look to see where you can have joint representation. It means to see you look to see where you have a similar geopolitical interest that you want to exercise in relation to third states, and you do so jointly. That does not take away the possibility that countries may have individual interests, which they also want to exercise and express, and the treaty allows that.
Yeah, because I think that we have seen quite a bit of movements about the whole question of foreign policy that there seem to have not been any harmony as far as some people are concerned. But I like your explanation in terms of what you just said there. Yeah. The distinction between unity and
uniformity and harmonization.
And harmonization. Now, when we talk about the question of business, when you sleep at night, and what is one business problem that keeps you awake? We have part of this business that, yes, there are certain things put in place for the movement. What gives you a hard night time to sleep?
Well, one of the problems in St. Lucia is a lack of skilled people. So skilled personnel in manufacturing. So with the option of the OECS, at least we have some options that we can look at before we go extra-regionally. And that's important because there are some levels of work where you will require a different skill.
Intense, you put my fingers a caller. But this time it's from Grenada. Grenada, thank you for calling.
Good evening, Barry.
Yes, good evening.
You and your ladies.
Yes, I have all ladies this evening.
Yeah, let me say this. I have lived through the Federation. And as far as I'm concerned, the Federation had all these facts and figures and things that were going to be done. It broke up. What makes you think that this Caricom or whatever it is would work? It would not work. Trust me. And I know it would not work. This whole thing is a talk shop. All what these Caribbean leaders are doing is just talk shop, talk. They don't have a clue, and they don't want to implement it because they're too damn selfish. Thank you.
Thank you, caller.
I think it comes back to the point. I mean, I could say for many years there has not been the kind of change I would like to see in St. Lucia that should have happened over that period of time. And I could well understand the frustration, because the more you work at something and the more you try, there's always a stumbling block that prevents something from being successful. And as a business person, it can be very frustrating doing business in the region because of all the obstacles that you have to face. But I think that we have to have a perseverance, and we have to have the leadership that would move this forward.
That caller's point is exactly the question of leadership.
Yeah.
The caller feels in his frustration that is
we
where
do
the
not
lack
have
of
the
is.
leadership that would carry this through.
But here's what the leaders say. You know, I've been to covering Caricom heads of government meeting, and the energy and what must I call it, expectations that happen during the conference is one thing. You call some of the same leaders 2 weeks later about the issue, and they say, but you know, yes, but you have to remember I have a constituency to deal with, you know. I have people. So for the average person, it seems that it's a joke. Quite frank. I understand the frustration of the caller. What do you say?
I say that yes, heads of government would say, I have a constituency and I have people to report to. But they have done so in a positive way as well. So that when they were discussing the matter of free movement, they saw this as critical for the OECS. They saw it as, it must work. Mm-hmm. It must work. So that people raised all kinds of reasons why it should not happen, and why you should not open up to everyone, and why you should have all kinds of barriers. But
another finger, right?
The callers.
A call from Barbados. Thank you for calling, Barbados.
Yes, the question which I wish to raise, the Caricom usually use the concept of a community of sovereign states to describe itself, which suggests that the members of Caricom are individual states reserving their sovereignty. My question is, to what extent is that concept of the sovereignty or the community of sovereign state relevant to the OECS, and are there any efforts towards achieving political union as opposed to merely economic union?
Great question, sir. Very good question. Very good question.
Good question indeed. The sovereignty of states, Jerry, we started early on that remains, that's a given. What the OECS countries have done differently in the revised Treaty of Bastille is to set out particular areas of legislative competence, I touched on it before, where they agreed that they would make legislation at the regional level. And they touched areas which are critical for establishment of the economic union and for deepening integration. So there are 8 areas in all listed in the treaty. The first 5 we refer to as areas of exclusive legislative competence. And they relate to the common market and customs matters, monetary policy, trade policy, civil aviation, maritime jurisdiction, maritime boundary delimitation. And in those areas, countries agree that they will make law together in concert. And for those areas, they will not proceed to legislate individually, except if there is agreement, express agreement at the regional level that they will do so. Then you have 3 other areas relating to common commercial policy, which is where competition would come in, the immigration and environment. And in those areas, we speak of overriding competence, so that the countries can, in fact, proceed to legislate, except if they make a determination that it is better to legislate jointly. And that is a major area, major and very significant area in which countries that they have essentially agreed to pool sovereignty, and if you want to term it that way, to cede some of the sovereignty. So they're saying, yes, we can, in fact, we have parliaments, national parliaments, we can always legislate. But for the common good, for purposes of deepening our integration, we see that it is better that we legislate in these areas jointly and in this fashion.
Now, because I look at my watch and realize we're running out of time, one of the things that's come very clear to persons who look around, the institutions of the OECS seem to be in trouble. Just last week or so, a week before, I think, the senior judge spoke to the question of the lack of funds. There's a funding issue with the aviation industry, a funding issue with the court. There's a funding issue with just about every single one of the organization. I mean, money is the lifeblood. So we could talk pretty in terms of the philosophies and so forth. How are we going to treat, and added to that, that practically every single one of the Caricom of the OECS countries are in a deficit financing situation. Can we sustain this? Do we have too many organizations?
You've been reading some important minds, Jerry, because that is a discussion. It's not new, but for OECS countries facing now this particular crisis, I think it has come even more to the fore. And so what we're doing as OECS, and I don't mean the Commission, I mean all the member states, is making a determination as to how to manage the institutions. It means rationalization. It means creating synergies where they can be created. It means using alternatives. Where can we cut travel? For example, for us at the Commission, video conferencing is used very, very significantly, very often, for meetings, so that you've cut the travel budget. Where can you cut in communications? We have a system within the Commission's offices where we can call our offices in Dominica, or in Brussels, or in Geneva as an extension using ICT. So you need to apply those things in a practical way to cut costs. There are certain costs that are inevitable. You cannot not pay the judges.
Because of the time on this one, it's a question of, okay, you're cutting costs, but it is clear that the regional governments are not meeting their commitments. So even if you cut costs and they don't meet their commitments to whatever they agreed to fund you.
But at least if you are able to cut costs, then you are closing the gap.
Fair enough.
And that is what I think is important while they ride this very difficult period, while they ride it out. But you can cut, and you have to cut only to the point where your institutions remain viable. But as I said, it's a matter of reducing where you can, creating synergies where you can as well, and ensuring that you rationalize what you have. Because you can't just simply decide, I'm not going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 institutions. Do you need them? You have to make a determination about their continued relevance? And if they continue to be relevant, then it means that they have to be funded.
We'll go to our final break on this edition of Time to Face the Facts. We'll be back for remaining moments with our guests. Don't go away.
To thrive in today's dynamic business environment, you need the right partner. Digicel Business is that partner, offering you the flexibility you need to flourish. Our scalable solutions will increase your effectiveness and efficiency while enabling workforce mobility. Large or small, you can't hide from potential threats to your business. With a partner protecting your interests, you can focus on productivity. It's amazing where the right partnership can develop and how far it can take you. Contact us today. Digicel Business, complete solutions for your needs.
If you are serious about business, then log on and participate in Business Advantage. Every Monday, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., log on to www.niceradio.info. Business Advantage inspires you to believe that the man who wins is the one who thinks he can. Business Advantage with host Jerry George, mentoring the next generation of Caribbean entrepreneurs. 8 to 10 p.m. Mondays on www.niceradio.info. For further information, email caribbeaninformationhub@gmail.com. Like the Business Advantage Facebook page or call 1-784-456-5967 to participate.
Welcome back for remaining moments on this edition of Time to Face the Facts with Safia, Emma Jane, and Paula. But let's go to the telephone lines immediately. Seem to hear a call coming instead of the call being there. We'll see. Okay, let's go. The OECS Assembly, you mentioned it in terms of its function, but how does the region know when this happens?
It's publicized. It's one of the meetings that is actually publicized. It's on television, it's on radio, and it's streamed live on the internet. And we let people know in advance that the Assembly is going to meet. And it's important, Jerry, because as I said, you have government and opposition sitting in the room and debating matters of interest, of national interest and regional interest. While the Assembly doesn't legislate like a national parliament, it is deliberating on significant policies that impact people's lives. And so we try to ensure that those deliberations are aired. Not we try to, but we do ensure that they are aired publicly. So people ought to know, and I encourage people to follow the discussions.
But what has been the uptake? What has been the response to that? Have you checked across the region at all?
Not in an empirical way, no. But we have had all of the sister stations, the Newslink stations. They would normally carry the discussions.
Some people's feeling about parliaments are some people just like another talk shop and they don't bother. So how do you sell to them that this is really different? This is not your regular parliament.
I think that the selling point is that matters that would otherwise, you wouldn't even know about them, but as I said, they are going to have an impact on your daily life. And so regional integration is not, it's not a nebulous concept. Regional integration is about practical, hard things that are happening. So when the Assembly was discussing free movement, that is something in which people ought to be interested in, and to which they ought to be paying attention. We were talking about the financial situation regarding member states. In the upcoming meeting of the Assembly, which is scheduled for October, they will be discussing the 8-point growth and stabilization plan, because that is a matter of significant growth and stabilization plan.
Not the
it is
8-point
growth and stabilization plan.
Oh, we're running out of time. Let me give you a chance to make your wrap-up statements, because we're just about at that point.
Well, I think that what has been done with the OECS integration, we have seen some movements taking place, and especially with the movement of persons and goods and services. In St. Lucia, we've seen a lot being done as far as customs is concerned. They're working very closely with manufacturers, and we seem to have no problems with that.
You want to get in a very short call from St. Lucia?
Yeah.
Let's call before. St. Lucia?
Yes, good evening.
Very short.
Very good program.
Thank you.
And very informative. What I would like to ask the panel is whether any countries other than those traditionally English-speaking Caribbean countries could join the OECS. I'm referring to places like Martinique and Guadeloupe.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Can Martinique and Guadeloupe join?
As a matter of fact, Martinique has sought to join the OECS as an associate member, and that is under deliberation. Heads of government anticipate that they will make a decision on it, or they would be ready to have them accede in November, possibly.
Shafia, your closing comments?
Okay. What I wanted to leave in relation to the movement of persons is for persons to understand it's a OECS-wide labor market that the treaty creates, so that your space is no longer your national territory as the island that you're home to, but your space is both for businesses and for persons seeking work at the OECS, as in the 7 member states that are part of the protocol.
And persons can feel comfortable to move.
And they can feel comfortable to move.
Let me let you finish your because we kind of interjected there with that call.
My trend of thought has gone, but I think I was saying that as far as customs is concerned and manufacturing, we are working very closely, and they have really changed their whole approach, which is making things much easier for us to do business. So if we saw that in the rest of the OECS, and we saw that sort of harmonization, I think that we will be able to do a lot better. Yeah.
Got the final say.
Thank you, Jerry. I just want to encourage OECS citizens to continue along the path that we're going with integration. It's important for all of the member states. There's no opting out of integration. And while we accept...
Okay, could I just comment again?
Yes.
When they had the Scottish referendum, did you guys hold your heart for a bit?
No, we did not. No, actually, I called it right. I called it very right, yes. But as I said, it's not a matter of opting out. We need to continue on this path of integration. Yes, there has been the history of failure, but I believe that what we see demonstrated now among the member states is a will to continue and to succeed. Integration is not an event. I can't say that often enough. It's not an event. It is a series of actions, deliberate actions that we need to take, and we need to stay the course.
What worries you?
You know, I told you earlier that I'm not... What keeps me awake is that I really want to see it succeed. I really do want to see it succeed. There's no question in my mind that it can succeed. We didn't talk about nationality, but I was born in St. Lucia of a Dominican father and mother from Panama and grandmother from Jamaica. I live integration. And every day we live integration. We may not recognize it, but we do. And so for me, it is that I really would like us to succeed and to continue on this path.
Paula, Emma-Jean, Safia, it's your start to call you Paula. Thank you very much. It was really been a pleasure to have you. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Thanks for having us.
This has been this month's edition of Time to Face the Facts. We have looked at OECS integration. We hope we've answered some of your questions, given you some inspiration, but more importantly, engaged you to become much more focused on letting us work together. I'm Jerry George. Whatever you do this week, be outstanding.